Take a moment to feel your feet on the ground. And to begin by breathing all breath out. Starting with shifting the weight back into the heels, to the point where you can feel contact with the mounds of the big toe and the pinky. The toes don't peel off. And then shift the pelvis and upper carriage forward so you feel weight in the mound of the big toe and the pinky. Just do that a few more times. And then settle in between the heels and the mound of the big toe and the pinky. And you're going to peel the toes up off the floor, feeling contact with the 3 points of your feet, and then starting with the big toes, pressing the pad of each toe into the ground. And one more time, feeling the 3 points of the feet, pulling all the toes up, and starting with the big toe, pressing pad of each toe into the ground. I'm just going to shift the weight side to side. So, feeling how it feels to imagine that the pelvis is a pendulum between two panes of glass, and it's just moving into that lateral plane. Now you're going to let the pelvis start to arc. So it's not between two panes of glass anymore. There's a rotational quality to it. Keeping with this just arcing of the pelvis, you're going to just gesture with the arms. And then create some height differential. So we're still arcing the pelvis side to side, but now we're also moving up and down. Good, stand for a moment. I'm just going to float the heels up, draw the heels up through the belly of the calves towards the sit bones. And then from here, allow the knees to bend, the hips to sink back and lower down. And then at the bottom, let the heels rock back and come back up to standing. I'm going to float and draw the heels up into the calves and then sink down at the bottom. Let the heels rock back, press the ground away, come back up. One more time like that. Heels draw up and through the calves. The bottom, planting the heels and coming back up. This time we're going to sit back down into the bottom of that squat, the heels down, and then you're going to draw the heels up and press all the way up into standing. Again, drawing down, rocking the heels up, pressing up, standing. One last time, heels down, drawing the hips down to the floor, rocking the heels up, pressing up. Woo, to standing. Good. Okay, we're going to come down to the ground to do a few more things for the hips and for the shoulders. So, assuming that you don't have a block or it's tricky to find a block, I'm going to use the stairs. And then for the front of the hip stuff, I'm going to use, I'm going to show you an option with the TheraBand, but also just with your hand. So laying down here, actually going to change the mat a little bit for this first one. Okay, so the variation using the hands is we're here, you're going to raise the heel and bring the knee towards the chest in a range where the pelvis doesn't peel up off the ground. And then tap the toe, bring the knee towards the chest. So now to get the front of the hip stuff working a little bit more, you use your hand and we're going to resist, but the leg is going to win. And then I'm going to lower it down. I don't want to be working so hard that I hold my breath or anything. Again, finding the resistance between the hand and the thigh, and the thigh is going to win. Pelvis nice and steady and quiet. And one more time. And the front of the hip is going to win. So that's an option using the hand. Actually, we're just going to stay with that. I'm not even going to use the TheraBand. Let's keep things as few props as possible. So I'm going to go over to the other side, front of the hip, and moving this femur bone, working the front of the hip stuff, then tapping the toe down and letting the thigh win and overpower my hand, but my hand is offering some resistance. One more on the side. Okay, so I'm going to move my mat so I can use the stair. If you don't want to use a stair, block works. If you've got a block, you can also use a little footstool or a bench. I'm going to put my feet up onto my stair, and depending on your ankles, you might find that the whole of the foot doesn't comfortably lay flat on the surface that you're on, and that's okay. You could have the toes lifted and the heel just on whatever it's on, and then you're going to press down from behind the knees through the heels and draw from behind the knee up to your sitting bone as the heels sink into the bench and the hips lift up. So now we're targeting the back of the hip stuff. If you feel like your low back is arching a lot in order to lift you up, don't lift as high. The other thing you can do is reach the hands to the ceiling, and if you bring in some flexion of that thoracic spine, it will keep you out of lumbar spinal extension. It'll keep your low back from overworking in this. Okay, then when we're lifted, you're going to play with bringing as much weight into the one back of the hip stuff as you can, so that my leg's not working very much here. It might even come off, but only as long as the pelvis stays level. Whew. Okay, now I'm going to lower down. So isolating the back of one hip, then I'm going to switch to the other side. Now I'm going to wiggle a little bit away from the stair so my feet aren't as close to my bum, and that's going to load my hamstrings and the back of my thighs even further. And I'm going to lift up and lower down, nice and slow, and lift up. And lower down nice and slow. Now if I want to get more of my outer hip stuff, I'm going to take the legs or the feet a little bit wider and point them out a little bit, and that's going to get me a little bit more onto the outer bum hip stuff. Again, if you want to make sure, if you feel like that low back is trying to help or going into extension, if you press the ceiling or the sky away with your hands, it will keep you out of that low back. So right here I'm trying to push the stair that way, as well as pushing the stair down, and just in an isometric hold here for 5, 4, 3, 2, and a nice slow lower down. Okay, I'm going to reposition my mat so I can show the upper body shoulder bit focus stuff. Which we often kind of forget how much the shoulders impact what's happening in the hips and vice versa. So what we're going to start to play with here is the arms out to the side, and we're going to start with just rolling in a wrist, reaching across to the other palm, getting as much space between the medial edge of the shoulder blade and the spine as you can, and just reaching on a couple of angles and then releasing back down. Curling once again. I'm going to slide palm past palm, and then just reaching up, letting my gaze follow that reach, and then coming back down. One more time. We're going to straighten one leg. I'm just going to place the hand on the opposite ribs. I'm going to reach my opposite hand to the ceiling, and then place my palm beside my head. And I'm going to play here with pressing the ground away with the hand and with the foot, so that I'm rolling towards my one side. Kind of playing with the arc of my elbow and my knee, thinking of them each doing kind of a rainbow trajectory to roll me towards the opposite side. I'm going to bring my arms out into that T formation again and bring my feet off the ground, and playing with taking the legs over to one side and the knees kind of towards that elbow, keeping the back of my shoulder spreading and in contact with the ground. So working the back of the shoulder stuff and some core, and I want to take my head up and in the direction that my knees are going. I might reposition my elbow on the ground, see how a slightly different angle loads the back of that shoulder. I'm going to let my forearm do some rotation, see how that translates to behind the shoulder. I might even come up and onto a hip and an elbow, getting into my obliques a little bit more. I could bring my opposite hand into my fist. Okay, and then I'm just going to lay out here for a second. Just feeling the difference between my right side and left side. And you might notice that the side that we just did that movement on feels longer. And often we don't think of engaging or actively working, how that can create a release. We think that stretching does that. But we can be stretching things and releasing things through engagement. Okay, and so then we're going to prepare and do the same sequence here on this other side. Give much space again between the shoulder blade and the spine as you can, and just reach on a couple of different diagonals once you get over to that side. Now we're going to straighten the one leg, just holding the rib cage. I'm going to reach up at my palm on the ground, and I'm going to play with having my elbow and my knee arc in opposite directions of one another, as if they're each finishing the same rainbow arc. And I'm seeing if I can have the movement be mostly hip and shoulder, and not as soon as I push into the ground with the hip and shoulder coming into spinal extension. So imagine more of the top side rolling onto the bottom side without flexing the spine. Or sorry, I guess that would be extending the spine. to help kind of get a little bit of movement of that shoulder blade. And then coming down, lifting the knees up. And we're going to play with rolling, loading the back of the shoulder stuff. Again, if you're feeling the low back coming into some extension, bring the knees more towards the elbow as you come across to the side. And then taking a break here and just checking in. Okay, so I'm going to flip all the way over. Coming on to hands and knees. Tucking the toes under. And don't worry about bringing the heels to the ground, but we're going to lift the hips up, press back with the shoulders, and come into downward facing dog. And just kind of lower the hips, come into plank, lower the knees down, shift the hips back towards child's pose, look forward, come forward, tuck the toes under, hips and shoulders back, into downward dog again. You might lift and lower the heels. Press and walk the hands. So let's walk the hands forward, the hips lower, into plank, and then pressing back towards dog, and we're going to walk the hands back, finding a little bit. Breathe into the back body. And the space between the shoulder blades and the back ribs. Rounding through that spine. Coming through to plank. And then we're going to push the hips back into downward dog. Walk the hands forward. Back into a really wide downward dog, walking the hands back, finding your more neutral down dog. Again, breathing into the back body, those back ribs, the space between your shoulder blades. 2 more breaths. And then you're going to lower back down into hands and knees. Take the hips back towards the heels.
extending the arms out or stacking the fists underneath the forehead, or reaching the arms alongside the body with the palms up to the ceiling, the crown of the head onto the floor, coming into resting pose for about 5 breaths here. Again, focus on feeling the movement of the back body, the movement of each rib. Seems my neighbor has decided to trim his hedge right now. Okay, and then we're going to walk the hands forward and down onto belly. Forehead just resting on the back of the hands. I'm just rolling the bum side to side. And you're going to come to stillness. Bring the elbows underneath the shoulders. Press the top of the feet down into the floor. So you should feel weight through the pubic bone. You can take the elbows a little wider or a little narrower, wherever they need to be to have you feel like you've got connection through the pubic bone, through the tops of the feet, and through the forearms. And then we're just going to play here with the right forearm. We're going to roll it up towards the sky into some supination. And then we'll roll the left up towards the sky in some supination. Feel how that impacts the shoulders. Rolling the right palm down, rolling the left palm down. And then laying down the belly, elbows go wide, vertebra by vertebra, laying out long. Maybe again rocking the tops or rolling the tops of the thighs across the floor, rocking the bottom side to side. So we're going to leave the back of the forehead on the backs of the hands. The forehead on the backs of the hands. And then we're going to reach through the right leg and reaching through the left leg. And releasing them back down. This time reaching the right arm back, bringing the palm onto the floor, and the left arm back, palm onto the floor, connecting those palms into the ground, pressing the ground away as you reach through the right hip and the left hip. You might alternate and do one leg at a time, pressing the opposite top of the foot into the floor. Final restorative posture that we're going to finish with before Shavasana here is simply coming onto the back and taking the legs out nice and long,
letting the soles of the feet find one another. Maybe it's just actually the heels. In Baddha Konasana. So don't worry about having the heels super close to the bum. Just actually take the heels apart and let there be some abduction and external rotation in the thighs. You might have a rolled blanket underneath each thigh, or you just might be on the outside edge of each heel and foot, like I am. And if you're feeling like your low back is extending, you can bring the upper body up on a bolster or a pillow or a blanket, just supporting kind of the shoulder blades and the head, and that will take out that lumbar extension. The other thing that could take out the lumbar extension is I've got my stairs here, and I could come into this posture with my feet supported on blocks, bolster, or the stairs. Which actually this feels really nice and supported here. Two more breaths here, and then you're going to move into final posture of the practice, Shavasana. And I invite you to stay here for as long as you like. Definitely taking several minutes. And if the mind needs an anchor, you could silently say inhale and exhale with your breath. And stay here as long as you like in Shavasana. Namaste.